The Chicago Bulls have 3 players ranked on the Ringer's top 100 list. We're going to talk a little bit about that and what the Chicago Bulls could learn from the way that the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder were built, and hopefully learn from his past mistakes. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And Bulls have 3 players ranked in the top 100 on the Ringer. I just want to spend some time at the top of the show because I don't know how negative this is going to get later on, but, I want to spend some time of the show, giving those players some love, right? Coby White came in ranked the highest at number 71. For what that's worth, he's a little bit behind DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. They are at 67 and 68, respectively. But Coby White, 71. Now, that is a couple of spots lower than he was last year, which is a little weird that he's a little bit lower considering the season that he had. And no, they're not just holding him back just because of it, not just the play-in. At least I would not hope if you're coming up with a fair ranking, but he is. So shout out to Coby White being number 71. He is a player that, is up on the rise, and hopefully for once not having his role change from one year to another helps Coby White, really show and remind people what he can be. Now, hopefully that would also mean not changing teams, but that's a story in an episode for another day, which we've covered on a couple of episodes already. Josh Giddey came in ranked at number 81. He was ranked around a lot of other role players, but Josh Giddey has also talked about the start of his season. He understands at the start of the season, he said that that's not who he is as a player, and it's going to be up to him to prove it. It's a lot of prove it when it comes down to these two guys, both Coby and Josh Giddey. They have a lot that they need to prove coming into the 2025-26 season, and Josh Giddey, he's definitely one of those guys. Finished the season very strongly after the All-Star break, almost 10 and 10 almost. He was 20, 10, and 9, right? So almost a triple-double that he averaged in the second half of the season. Now, I'm not expecting him to do that. That'll be ridiculous. Those would be MVP-caliber numbers if he's able to average that for a season. But you do want to see a Josh Giddey that is much just more natural in what he does well, understanding where and when to attack. Josh Giddey also gave tremendous effort defensively towards the end of that season, and understood better on-ball stuff there and how to use his strength and his size against some of the smaller point guards. But Josh Giddey still has a lot of things, and he'll be one of the first people to tell you. There's a lot of things that he needs to show at the beginning of next season and to prove not only to the fan base and the NBA, but to himself, right? And that's the most exciting thing about this when it comes to Josh Giddey and Coby. These are two very motivated players. Coby White already in the lab working. We saw him working with Johnny Dribble Too Much, which he does every offseason, right? He puts in that work to continue to improve his game. And, Coby has to, if Coby, the next step for Coby is 2 things, right? We know what he can do when he gets hot. We know what he can do off drives. Those things have stayed the same. Coby is going to have to become a better catch and shoot player. And I know that's not where he's been strong at. The catch and shoot numbers are mid at best. But much like, and I always use this comparison for players that adapt their game, not everybody's able to do it. And I want to be clear there. But once Kurt Heinrich knew that he was going to be playing and moving a shooting guard to play next to D Rose, well, I'm gonna say DeMar DeRozan, to play next to Derrick Rose, he went into that offseason understanding how to change his body, right? He went into that offseason understanding that he wasn't going to have as many opportunities to drive, but he was going to have to become a better three-point shooter, which he was already solid enough at, right? And so that's where we started seeing Kurt Heinrich start rounding out other points of his game. He focused on defense at that point in time as well, and he really became kind of that fluid shooting guard next to D Rose for a couple of seasons. For the Bulls, ended up moving on from him to make big pursuits in the free agency of 2010, which is history repeating itself, but with Coby this time. Nonetheless, hopefully Coby's able to work on some things specifically to kind of help that fit with him and Josh Giddey better, and Josh Giddey too, right? Like, now if Coby's going to be your backcourt mate, there are certain things that you need to work on your game, especially being 22 years old. So hopefully these two guys, they come in, they play much better, and their rankings are even higher next season around this time. Then you had Vooch to round out that list at number 92. Vooch is still one of the best players, the top 100 players in the NBA. He just is. He's still one of the better centers in the NBA. It's just that Vooch at this point, as I think a lot of players get to this point that already start off with a deficit in their game, where he's going to need a specific type of player next to him to help cover up some of his shortcomings. And that just is what it is at this point with Vooch's career, right? He's never really been a great a great defender. He has some times that are better on ball than not, which is, when you watch the game, you kind of see some of that. But Vooch is going to have to grow as a player and hopefully get into a situation where he has kind of better fit around him. I know Vooch is still going to want to compete. One of the benefits of Vooch's game not really being based off athleticism is that he should be able to stay at a certain level for a while. Vooch is probably going to be 18-10, then probably drop down to like a 16-8. He'll be that for probably another 3 or 4 years if he really wanted to extend his career that way. So, look out for that for Nikola Vucevic. It does not need to be here, if that makes some sense. So, that's what you're looking at for Nikola Vucevic, and we'll see and hope that continues to play out for him. So, overall, 3 players on the top 100 for the Chicago Bulls. Love seeing that. Shout out to those guys for playing in a way that has earned them that. But let's go ahead. I said we were gonna start off positive, and not to say that this is necessarily going to go negative in the next one, but it's going to take a honest, hard look and evaluation. So we heard a couple of weeks ago that Arturas wants to emulate the Pacers, right? That's what he's trying to, not necessarily in play style, not necessarily in personnel, meaning that your point guard in Josh Giddey has to play like Tyrese Halliburton. It's not saying that, but emulate how they built their team. And one of my co-hosts, Doug Branson, over on Locked On NBA, had he called this the perfect NBA team building finals, as far as 2 teams that have been very well built. And that's when you got to look at how these teams did it, right? They did it in different ways, but similar. OKC Thunder began their rebuild when they traded Paul George, they traded Russell Westbrook to the Clippers and to the Rockets, right? They got back in that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who at that point in time, we didn't know that Shai was going to turn into an MVP level player, but he was a player that showed some promise, and was a player that when you saw him, you're like, hey, that kid got something, right? And then they got 7 first-round picks back between that. 2 of those first-round picks turned into Jalen Williams and Cason Wallace. And then they used their own picks that they had to get to that turned into Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren. They then turned Josh Giddey into Alex Caruso. They then this offseason, right, they went out and got Isaiah Hartenstein and they got Alex Caruso. They got players that fit what they were trying to do without giving up a whole lot. They still have tons of draft capital, right? And they were able to build a team that got to the second round of the playoffs naturally through the draft picks that they got from those 2 trades and the way that they built and developed their players. Then they went out and got Alex Caruso. They got Isaiah Hartenstein to help push them over the top, and now they're in the NBA Finals, right? The Pacers took a little bit of a different route to get there, but again, similar, right? They flipped Domantas Sabonis to the Sacramento Kings, and they got Tyrese Halliburton back in that trade, right? And this was a team in Indiana, much like the Bulls are now, that have been stuck being mid for years and years and years before eventually getting to the place of making that trade. They send out Domantas Sabonis. They got Tyrese Halliburton back, a player who at that point had shown some things, right, but didn't really have the opportunity to spread his wings and turn into the player that he eventually became, right? And Halliburton became a legitimate young star that gave them a focal point to build around. They added him to a player that they already had drafted in Miles Turner, right? And then they went out and surrounded him with very versatile players that provided spacing and defense when they added Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, Obi Toppin. They got those guys in trade. And then look at their draft selections. Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, Jarace Walker, Ben Shepherd, right? They got these guys also with drafting smart and looking at fit when they drafted, right? So they rebuilt their roster to fit what the modern NBA was going to, and to be very versatile in how they can embrace things, but also they had some pretty damn good coaching in over that time as well, right? They embraced youth, in shooting, versatility defensively and offensively, but they picked a direction and they stuck to that direction and saw that direction through, and now look at what it gave them, right? The Pacers could have easily pivoted after some of the years where their record wasn't necessarily what they had hoped it could be. They could have easily pivoted, and they did not. They saw out the process, and that's where AK went wrong. Let's flip that and look at what AK did, right? By the time that AK came into this team and talked about wanting to evaluate, build young and organically through the draft, right? But then 6 months into that, less than 6 months into taking over the job, you traded 3 first-round picks, I believe, to get an aging center in Nikola Vucevic. Now, at the time, it meant that the Bulls were making a move to clearly try to become a playoff team. And they almost made the playoffs that year. Then Zach LaVine got COVID at the end of that year and ended up missing a lot of time, right? But then you got Nikola Vucevic, you got DeMar DeRozan, you got Lonzo Ball, you got Alex Caruso. You got a mix of players that were older and younger. But the fit was always questionable. DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic have always started their offense in the same spot. I've been drilling that home for years, right? And so by the time then you decided that this wasn't going to work out and you pivoted from those guys, it was well behind the time that taking advantage of them. You didn't move DeMar DeRozan in a offseason, well, in a season where as an expiring contract, you probably could have got something back for DeMar. I'm not saying you could have gotten a great package back, but you could have got something back for DeMar. Zach LaVine, the OKC Thunder and the Pacers, they moved off a young player. Well, players that was still decent. Like Russ was still at a pretty good age when they moved on from him. And the Pacers and Sabonis, they moved on from those guys and they got players back. The Bulls held on to Zach LaVine. They got offered a deal from the New York Knicks that included multiple first-round picks that could have been your Domantas Sabonis trade. But no, you held on to him too long because you wanted to double down on continuity at the wrong time. You know what else the Bulls did? The Bulls made their big trade, their big move to send out first-round picks just to become a playoff team. What did the Thunder do? Right? The Thunder were acquiring picks and only started making major acquisitions in Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, sitting out a player that they drafted in Josh Giddey to get Alex Caruso, but they did that after they had already made the second round of the playoffs. Then they made moves that made sense. So AK went wrong in a couple of places here. He waited too long to move off of certain assets. The team that he already built was already shaky. Right now, I don't know, some people are going to leave it, but we were number one team in the East, Hayes. Yeah, we weren't going to stay number one team in the East, not in that season. We're probably going to drop to about 4th or 5th. But they continually also made moves. The Pacers never really stayed stagnant. They either made some very important draft pieces or they made some trades over the last few years. AK instead stayed stagnant for years. And over that point of being stagnant, you let players walk away that you could have got something back for. 2 second-round picks for Andre Drummond, which we know AK doesn't value second-round picks, but then again, those are also pieces that you can use in subsequent trades. We didn't get the first-round picks back for Zach LaVine. Hell, just this past trade deadline, you didn't get a pick that became the 18th overall pick for Lonzo Ball. So when you think about this and how AK and his team building have just not been at the level, it's the hesitation behind pulling the trigger on moves that have continually hurt this Bulls team. Unlike the Pacers and the Thunder, the Bulls have refused to commit to anything other than staying the same. That's basically what they've committed to. That's why even hearing the trade talk with Coby, it's kind of surprising because this has been a franchise that for the most part has been perfectly fine staying stagnant with their hands in their pants, looking like, hey, well, I'm a pretty cool dude. The Vooch trade was a win now move that cost you long-term assets. Just look at what those players turned into. Franz Wagner, Jet Howard. I think Anthony Black was even one of our draft picks, right? The DeMar DeRozan. It worked okay. You got really good production from DeMar. He came in and was DeMar and played great in a Bulls uniform. But the thing is that what do we really win out of that? We had one playoff appearance with 1 playoff victory and 3 play-in appearances. It was 2 while under DeMar. So unfortunately, not going out and getting DeMar what he needed, and that was an actual point guard. Now you look at this place where it didn't really bring about the change that you want. You signed a player that had a pretty solid, decent few years for you, but it is what it is. So let's bring all that back. What can AK learn from the Pacers and from the OKC Thunder to get the Bulls to a place? And again, I'm not saying necessarily to get to the finals. It's going to take some time. You're going to have to build. You're going to have to make. You're going to have to be smart in it. The Bulls have to actually do things right. And I said this, and this is a little bit of what I alluded to in yesterday's episode. You can have the summer of 26 plan all you want, but what are they coming here to play with? What are you coming here to play with? We are even more restricted than the other teams because we won't pay the luxury tax. Now, I don't believe the Thunder or the Pacers are luxury tax paying teams, which is great for that whole thing, and it shows that you can get it done without paying the tax. But at the same time, like, you already have a huge limitation. That's what the Bulls have. They have a huge limitation by the tax not even being an option for them. For example, even with the DeMar DeRozan signing trade last year, had the Bulls been willing to go into the tax, they could have taken on Harrison Barnes and gotten a first-round pick in that. But because the Bulls are not a tax-paying team, they can't do that. And so that leads you in the place where you are now. So you have to be even smarter, right? You have to be even smarter in the moves that you make to get there. Yeah, and I just checked. Yeah, for example, the Thunder, the young team that has a bunch of draft picks, $16 million, but beneath the luxury tax. Next season, they're a little bit less than that this season, but still beneath the luxury tax. The Indiana Pacers, another team, beneath the luxury tax. So again, if you want to be smart, it's not just about spending money. And so many people look at this as teams that have to spend money. You have to go into the luxury tax just to be good. No, you go into the luxury tax to stay good, maybe. And I can give you that. To stay good, yeah, you may have to you may have to go over the luxury tax. But that's once you get to being good. But we're past the dates in time where you have to pay the luxury tax just to be a good team. We're past that. Well past that, to be 100% honest with you. So, again, to learn from what this current team building is, you just got to be smart. And if you're not smart in how you make your money, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really, really bad. And that's where AK has been over the last couple of years, is that. So, again, to get back, what can he learn from this team? Is A, you have to be smart in what you do. And you have to be intentional in the moves that you make here. You have to operate with a clear vision and path, and that's something that this team has not done. And you have to be willing to shake the tree a little bit, meaning you got to be willing to move off of players that if you know you're not going to keep, you don't let them walk away for free, but also that comes with an evaluation of moving off those guys at the right time. Now, let's say the Bulls are somehow this offseason committed to moving Coby White. Again, not what I want to see, not necessarily all the way what I believe, but if they are, you did it again. Now you've did it at a time where you've changed his role for each of the last 3 years. You may have not struck when the value was the highest at the trade deadline. Well, that remains to be seen. But now you put yourself in a place where you have to do it immediately because Coby White's a free agent at the end of the season. So you're either going to do it before the season or you got to do it by the trade deadline. But also, what does that also mean when you look at the OKC Thunder? Accumulating picks, developing talent well, have good long-term thinking, and not settling for being just enough. And that's where this Bulls team has settled at for way too long, is being just good enough. And that has really led you to not being good enough to do anything meaningful. You got a couple of play-in wins to show for it and a playoff win, and you got completely blown out outside of that. You have nothing to show for all the assets that you sent out, all the money that you have spent, all the contracts that you have extended. You have not seen nothing from it. So it's not just about replicating a team's success by being able to do exactly what they did. The Bulls will never be able to do what OKC Thunder did. They don't have players the caliber of Russ or Paul George. They don't have the caliber of players the caliber of that to make moves off those guys and to get that number of picks back. But you do have some stuff where you can do similar to the Pacers, making smart moves, striking at the right time. That's why hearing things like Cam Whitmore, that could be maybe your acquisition there. That could maybe be your player that you get buy low on for the most part, but maybe it ends up coming in here and is able to spread his wings a little bit and do a little bit more, right? So that's kind of what you're looking at, is you have to be smart. And so, when people say like, Hayes, why aren't you more upset about the Coby rumors? A, one, because I don't believe it. And B, it would show the first time that AK is thinking ahead in a while. If that ends up being what he's doing, I still have my doubts. You got to be smart. And the Bulls may have missed their window to accumulate more picks. We'll see how they fluctuate things. I've said it before, $61 million in expiring contracts. You can play the third team and the contract filler in 2 or 3 deals this year and accumulate multiple picks back in doing that. But AK has not shown a propensity to be able to do that and get that done because guess what? He values every asset too high. He trades with every player that he does trade too late and too low in most cases as well. And then you're letting players walk away in free agency that you could move at the trade deadline to get something back. So that's where the Bulls sit. It's not easy to replicate what the Pacers and the Indiana Thunder have done all this talk for these last 20 minutes or whatever, it does oversimplify it a little bit. But again, you have to have a vision. You can't operate, you can't move with intention if you don't have a vision. And that keeps being what this team tries to do. They try to figure some things out on the fly, and they hope that their vision is going to come to them in the sense that a player will finally step up and become a star, and then that will give them their vision. You can't wait to that. You have to have a vision before that, to a degree. Now, I do think if AK is ever around, still leading this Bulls team, once we do get a legit star here, I do think he will move a little bit better. But the problem is that you can't just wait to be smart till you get that guy. You just can't wait to be smart to do that. So, that's just my thought process. Again, I know people are going to take this more negatively than I mean it, but I'm just reviewing the situation for what it is and what the reality is. And we'll see what comes out of that, how the Bulls perform in that, and if we can be better. That's all I can say. But for now, that's my time. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.